Hello there, YouTube. Welcome to my channel. I want to wish you all a very happy 2020. I hope you all enjoyed New Year's Eve and all the festivities that went along with it. Today I want to make a video about the Young People Ask book, part 2. And I've already recorded the video a couple of times, and each time something went wrong with the recording. So I guess 6th time is a charm. I don't know. So I'm not going to put it up on screen. You can read along with me with the book, because you can download it on jw.org, the Jehovah's Witness website. Under books and publications, I guess you can look up Young People Ask, and you can select the language. And I downloaded the English version. And the whole title of the book is Questions Young People Ask, Answers That Work, Volume 2. And this book came out in 2008. I was kind of still in the organization at that time. I don't know if I studied this book. I don't think so. I studied the old version of the Young People Ask book. And actually I wanted to use this this publication for the part 2 series of silly analogies, because in this book I found a couple of gems of those silly analogies as well. And actually I'm going to describe the images that that are in this book. For the people who don't want to read along with me on their computer or phone screens, or just want to listen to this video while in the car or riding a bicycle, to all you Dutchies out there. And the first one we already have on page 16. There we have this this young guy. He's not really a teenager anymore. He's an adult. He's obviously an adult, but I can't really tell by this picture what his age is. And these aren't really pictures, though. These are kind of half illustrations, half pictures. I don't know. They combined some... I don't know. It looks like they put a filter on it, like this Photoshop filter or something. So it's not really a picture, but it's not drawing either. And on page 16 we have this guy. He's like this, and he's just staring into space. And the text next to it, so the first silly analogy. If you date with no intention of marriage, you are acting like a child who plays with a new toy and then discards it. And first of all, you're acting like a child. I mean, this guy is a grown-ass man. It's not a child. So I really don't know why they didn't use a photo of a child playing with a toy. I mean, that's what's the analogy is about, right? So I really don't know why they used the picture of this guy, actually. And I don't really know if he's annoyed, or he's sad, or maybe he's cringing really hard along with the rest of us. But the text, the analogy is really really belittling, actually. And it's kind of extreme as well, because they compare dating and marriage to children playing with toys. I mean, this is really extreme. If you date with no intention of marriage, you are like a child, acting like a child. And they compare the person who you date like a toy that you discard if you don't want to marry them. And that's kind of strange, because when two people get to know each other, they start dating. I don't know if anyone has marriage on their mind, really, in the first weeks or maybe even months. In my opinion, a lot of non-religious people are into this casual dating, casual sex and stuff. And people don't really get together with the intention of marriage. There are a lot of people who just want to use other people for their own pleasure or their own benefit in some way. and they do not think if they hurt the other person, or if the other person can get something out of this as well. But on the other hand, in religious communities, also in the JW community, young people tend to marry very young because there are a lot of restrictions when it comes to intimacy, sexual stuff. So it can be very hard for young people to, stay chaste. So people tend to marry after a very short period of dating, maybe sometimes even after a year. I've known people who married after 1 year when they were like 20, 21 years old. I've even known people who married at 18, 19. And it's not for me to judge if these people made a wrong choice or right choice. I don't know. It's not my marriage. It's not my business. But in my opinion, it's better to get to know someone better before you decide to make a lifelong commitment like a marriage. So it's not that maybe people don't have the intention of marriage, but if you're dating someone and you get to the conclusion that this person isn't very right for you, or maybe this person is really boring. Oh, hello. This is my kitty cat. Come here. Come here. Oh. So, maybe people just aren't compatible. And then there's no shame in saying, well, this person really isn't the one for me. And then there's no shame in breaking off a relationship or even an engagement when you're not really sure if you want to marry someone. Because I guess you'll be in a lot of more trouble when you marry someone who you're not compatible with. And you don't want to be in that position. So I digress a little bit. So let's go to the next silly analogy, which is on page 25. And we have two boys there. One boy is sitting at a desk with a napkin like stuffed in his collar, and he's eating a disproportionate big slice of cake. And his friend, I guess, is just covering for him. He's just like standing in front of the desk as to hide something. Well, yeah, what's happening here? Just sit down. And the text next to it is, covering up for a friend who is secretly dating is like covering up for a diabetic who is secretly gorging on sweets. Well, that analogy doesn't make any sense at all. Whatsoever, any sense. Because, one, who would be in a situation where that would happen? I mean, no one would put themselves in a situation like that. Either as a diabetic or the friend of this diabetic, because that's a crazy thing. I mean, people aren't that stupid, right? If you're a diabetic, you aren't supposed to gorge on sweets, cake. And if you're a diabetic's friend, you supposedly know that that's not okay. So you wouldn't cover up for someone. That is very strange. And they compare it to dating. And they don't even talk about why young Jehovah's Witness people would cover up if they're dating someone. Well, I tell you, because if you're dating as a Jehovah's Witness, there is no privacy at all. Well, maybe you can be alone together. I don't know, it's really frowned upon, or you have to do that in secrecy. But actually, I don't know if it's required, but actually you're supposed to take a chaperone with you if you go on a date with this person. Because Watchtower doesn't trust young people. Watchtower doesn't trust that young people have self-control. So someone has to go with them as a third wheel. And to be honest, nobody would be able to have a good relationship or to get to know the other person better, because you're not going to talk about serious adult stuff with your significant other when there is a third person around to just listen along with what you have to say. So I understand why young Jehovah's Witnesses would sneak off with someone or be in a relationship with someone in secret. And I don't think that they talk about if you're dating someone inside or outside the religion, but it doesn't matter probably. And they just compare it to something really dramatic, like a diabetic gorging on sweets and someone covering it up. And the next analogy we have on page 30. Not just any size shoe will fit. Similarly, not just anyone will make a good partner. It's kind of a demeaning thing that they compare people to inanimate objects. In this case, they compare them to shoes. And they didn't even need to make this comparison, because it's enough to say, not anyone will make a good partner. You don't have to compare people to shoes. That's really ridiculous. And the image that goes with it is this girl who's obviously having a hard time trying on shoes. And I already can see why she's having a hard time, because the shoe she's trying on is like 5 sizes too small. It's very, it's ridiculous. So they did, youngsters, they can understand the fact that not everyone will make a good partner. They didn't have to shoehorn in this analogy just so that young people would understand. And on the next page, page 31, we have this young guy who's looking at this super fast James Dean cool car. And the text that goes with it is, do you think it's important to look beyond outward appearance when choosing a car? And they assume you answer yes. How much more so when choosing a marriage mate? And again, they compare people to inanimate objects. In this case, a car. And of course, young people would understand that there's more to someone than outward appearance, although that's the first impression you get, right? I've heard somewhere that you get your first impression of someone in the first 7 seconds or something. So if someone looks like a hobo, you won't be really attracted to that person. So probably you won't go further beyond that to get to know a person, like in a person. And that's not superficial or shallow. That's just how it is, right? And the car is actually kind of a lame comparison, because you can take a car out for a spin on a test drive and just feel the materials. And I don't know what people do with a car when they buy a new car. But in Jehovah's Witness culture and many other religions, it's not really possible to get to know another person in that way, because Jehovah's Witnesses are really restricted sexually. It's not really that you can go for a test drive, although that sounds like a gross metaphor, and I don't mean it in that way. So yeah, it's kind of a bad comparison, the car. Let's go to page 47. And we have this image of a burning house. There's a lot of flames and smoke coming from it. And in the foreground, there's this girl, and she's like this. And I really don't know. I cannot make anything out of her expression, out of her facial expression, because it could be anything. Is she depressed? Is she shocked? Is she sad? Is she like, oh, the music here is way too loud? I don't know. It's kind of a strange, I don't know. It's strange body language. And the analogy they use here is Would you wait until your house caught fire before you installed an alarm? They assume that your answer is no again. Then don't wait until your passions are aroused before you establish ground rules for conduct. And this whole chapter is about sexual stuff, I guess, about intimacy between people. And the question here is, would you wait until your house caught fire? No one would wait until the house caught fire before they install an alarm. That's just common sense. That's super strange. So again, the analogy is super unnecessary because well, maybe not so much as with the shoes, but they could have said, don't wait until it's too late to set some boundaries or something, because that's really an important thing, to set some boundaries for and some rules for conduct when you're in a relationship, and not only if you're a young person, but also maybe in your 30s or 40s. There are supposed to be boundaries. I mean, if you don't have any boundaries, or you don't talk about these boundaries, people can get hurt and bad things can happen. I mean, if you respect yourself and your significant other, there should be some boundaries. What's okay, what's not okay. So yes, it's good advice, but it's kind of strange that they use this analogy. That wasn't really necessary though. And there's about staying a virgin. It's like, in the other book there was also a chapter on this one, and on page 54 we have this analogy: engaging in premarital sex is like opening a gift before it has been given to you. And there was this analogy in the other book as well, but it was something like that, like engaging in premarital sex is like using an expensive painting as a doormat, which was a very strange analogy, right? But this analogy is like, it's just equally strange, because we have this picture of this guy who's obviously in khaki slacks, although the image is in black and white. He's opening a box, and he looks like someone caught him opening a gift. And when do we have this scenario where you open a gift before it has been given to you? You can open something that hasn't been given to you yet. Or do they mean like opening Christmas presents underneath the Christmas tree? No, they don't mean that, because Jehovah's Witnesses don't celebrate Christmas. So they use strange analogies to talk about sex. It's kind of cringeworthy, but that's classical Watchtower for you. And here along this book there are a lot of quotes or some life stories, experiences of young Jehovah's Witnesses, and it's always kind of, you get the feeling that these experiences aren't real. They're just fabricated, and they Googled like some young people in suits or something, and they just took a stock photo from somewhere and they just put it in here. They made up a name, an age, and a story, because in no way are we able to verify the story. We're not able to contact these people. There's no mail address or phone number or whatever. There's no way we can contact these people to ask if this is really true, right? We're supposed to believe what's in the Watchtower publications, so we're not supposed to question this kind of stuff. So next we have this strange analogy. It's on page 101, and there's this image of this girl who is like dressed in her meeting clothes, and she's blindfolded, and she's just walking around blindly, and there's a wall behind her, and on the wall are these creepy shapes of creepy people. And an analogy that goes with this image is, would you walk blindfolded through the streets of a dangerous neighborhood? They assume the answer is no. Then why communicate online without being alert to the dangers? Well, the second thing, I can go with that. That's okay. But the analogy is so useless. I mean, would you walk blindfolded through the streets of a dangerous neighborhood? Why would you walk blindfolded anyway? I mean, that doesn't make any sense, unless it's for a game or something. But no sane person would walk blindfolded through a dangerous or maybe not so dangerous neighborhood. It doesn't make any sense. Who does that? So this is useless illustration, analogy. It gets worse and worse. The funny thing is, throughout this book, all the illustrations and images that portray young people, they always are dressed in these meeting clothes or field service clothes. I mean, doesn't anybody wear normal young people clothes? Like, that is so strange. Let's see, 141, the next analogy. If you're sinking in the quicksand of a double life, you need to call for help. And then there's a girl sinking into quicksand. Well, the question is, why do Jehovah's Witness youngsters have a double life? Why do they have a need of a double life? Well, that's because they really can't be themselves, can they? Because everything is micromanaged for them, even the people they befriend. And they feel trapped, they feel stuck, they feel suffocating. So yeah, sometimes people start to live a double life because they just can't be themselves in the organization. So they give you the advice, you need to call for help. Well, you don't need to call for help. Better don't, because if you do so, you might get disfellowshipped if you're a baptized Jehovah's Witness, or you might get this talk from some elders. You don't want to go through that. Just leave out these people from that kind of situation. And some Jehovah's Witness youngsters, they need to live a double life, so they have a backup plan. Maybe they want to leave the organization when they turn 18. So it's actually a good thing to have another set of friends somewhere else, or else you don't have a place to go, right? And they say, they assume that a double life is bad, that people like drink and use drugs and smoke and have bad friends. But double life doesn't have to be bad necessarily, because maybe the friends you have outside of the Kingdom Hall, maybe they are good people, friends who have your back. Because obviously some people in the Kingdom Hall inside the Jehovah's Witness organization, they don't have your back. So everyone needs someone who has their back, right? Then we have on page 160 this image of this guy who's driving this car with an open roof, and he's driving through the mountains where the road is kind of crooked, and he drives through this barrier. It's called a barrier, I don't know, it's kind of a fence, and this guy is blindfolded. What's up with that? The text next to it is, spending money uncontrollably is like driving blind. Wow, because that is a relatable situation. Really? Who does that? Driving blind? Are people mad? I mean, who wrote this stuff? I mean, this is oddly specific and it's not really relatable, so it doesn't make any sense. But of course, it's very good to be careful with your money, and a lot of suggestions that they give about money, they're kind of useful. But again, people don't need these kind of analogies. It doesn't make any sense. And then on page 203, we have a picture of three people in this kind of plane. And it's not really a Boeing or something. It's more like this plane that you can land in some farmer's field. And I guess it's two parents and a child. And the parents are arguing, and the child is like in the back seat trying to meddle. A youth who tells his parents how to solve their disputes is like a passenger who tells the pilots how to fly a plane. Well, this assumes that parents are super pros in relationships. I mean, if parents have a dispute, I mean, as an adult, I can say with all honesty that in a lot of facets of my life, I really have no idea what I'm doing. And you learn as you go, right? So if people are married, if it's even 10, 20, 30, 40 years, they might not know everything about marriage, relationships, because it's not something you learn from books. And I think it might help a lot of parents who tend to argue a lot to ask their child's opinion, and not really on how to solve problems, but maybe how they feel. I mean, children can feel very lonely when they see their parents disputing. They can maybe feel angry or scared or left alone or something like that. So I guess it's very good as a parent to ask your children how they feel and let them know that you still love them, although there are some disputes in the household between you and your spouse. So yeah, I guess children are involved whether people want it or not. I mean, that's how it is, right? On page 239, there's this guy who has a funnel on top of his head, and into the funnel all kind of media are being stuffed, like CDs, a computer, and this super old flip phone, and I don't know, some kind of images. And the analogy that goes with it is: would you allow viruses to invade your computer? Then why invite immoral thoughts into your mind? So they really go really strong on the thought control. You don't invite immoral thoughts into your mind. That's called puberty. And in puberty, well, maybe boys more than girls, I don't know, tend to think a lot about sexual stuff, but because that is when they explore their sexuality. So it's not really that you invite something into your mind. You cannot really control your mind in all aspects. But Watchtower wants to control your thoughts so that you don't think about sexual stuff, about normal human stuff, that you only think about going into service and finding new converts, I guess, because that is what you're supposed to do. And on page 250, we have another super unrelatable illustration or analogy, and there's this boy in a super boring striped polo shirt who's juggling with some jars with questionable contents. And the analogy that goes with it is: playing violent or immoral games is like playing with radioactive waste. The effects might not be immediately obvious, but they're inevitable. Who plays with radioactive waste? I mean, maybe some kids from Chernobyl. I don't know, but here nobody plays with radioactive waste. So nobody can relate to that. That's not a realistic example. And what do they mean by immoral games? I mean, Watchtower, obviously, as we all know, means sexual, sexually inappropriate. When they say immoral, it doesn't have to do anything with lying or stealing or cheating. It's always something that has to do with sex. So premarital sex, masturbation, homosexuality, that kind of stuff. So what kind of games are immoral? I cannot think of one, though. I really don't know. Violent games, yeah, that I can understand. But playing with radioactive waste, what? And a lot of time, when you play with radioactive waste, well, I don't know if you've seen the series Chernobyl, but people who got in contact with radioactive stuff, some of them died within a week. So the effects were actually immediately obvious. So it's kind of strange that they say, well, the effects may not be immediately obvious. Yeah, well, that's not a possibility. This is a very strange illustration. But that was actually all the ridiculousness I could find in the Young People as a Book Part 2 for the series of crazy analogies. Maybe I will find some other publications where they use crazy analogies. So I thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye!